great pleasure to have here in our Defense Academy the chairman to introduce General Ruzие to you. Gen-lейт.Патрик Дьо Рузие was born on the 11th of May 1995 in Dijon, France. He has education as follows. 1979 graduated French Air Force Academy. 1990 Commander Staff Course of the Canadian Forces of Toronto. 1994 National War College in Paris. General Dьо Рузие has an impressive military career. From 1979 to 1994, he occupied different positions as a commanding staff officer in French Air Force as follows. Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, Savoy. Tactical Turkey, 1991. 1994, he was posted to Air Force Staff General Plans, Planning Office, and 1996 became the head of the office. 1999, he was temporarily posted to the Kitchen Court as a deputy to the French SNR during the Kosovo War, and later this year took command of Nancy Air Force Base that operates the 3 Mirage 2000B squadrons in French Air Forces. From October to December 2001, during the war in Afghanistan, he participated in the first French operational detachment to U.S. Central Command in Tampa, Florida, as Air Force Advisor and Target. September 2002, he was promoted to Brigadier General and joined MOD General Staff in Paris as Assistant to the Vice Chief of Defense. September 2004, he was head Euro-Atlantic Division in the Defense Staff in Paris. September 2005, he was promoted to the rank of Major General. From 2006 to 2008, he was appointed Air Defense and Air Operations Commander-in-Chief, responsible for air policy and also for controlling rescue operations in the French airspace. In June 2008, he was posted to Brussels as French military representative to the European Union Military Committee at the time of the French presidency of the European Union. In 2010, he was promoted to the rank of General and position as General Inspector of Armed Forces. November 2012, Gen-lейт.Патрик Дьо Рузие entered the office of Chairman of the European Union Military Committee. General lost a total of 3,094 flying hours and participated in 76 war missions. He was awarded a Commander in the Legion of Honor, a Commander in the National Order of Merit, the French Medal of Aeronautics, and the German Military Medal in Gold. General has another tough responsibility as a married to Benedict and father of 5. General, for his work very much.
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to be here with you today and to have the opportunity to exchange my views on the European Union and on the very important contribution that Bulgaria plays and the armed forces of Bulgaria in all of this. As a chairman of the European Union Military Committee, it is an honor for me to share some thoughts with you because I am convinced that the European Union is not only built in Brussels, of course, but also in each member state. And because security and defense development concern all of us. This is why, General Simonov, I'm very happy that you invited me here for those last 3 days and that we had many exchanges. And I'm looking also forward to the exchanges of views that we will have in the coming minutes. I paid tribute to the unknown soldiers and laid to rest here in Sofia. This was a way of paying tribute to the engagement of the armed forces of Bulgaria in overseas operations for many, many years since in the past. I also went to see the Minister of Defense. I know that it was about a week ago that he just coming back from Afghanistan after a very long mission there. So I would like first to say that, in my view, today our world has become more and more unstable and unpredictable. There are new threats that have increased, such as terrorism and radical fundamentalism. Let's just remember what happened in the gas power station in Algeria a few months ago. We also have failed state. Let's remember northern Mali as it was a few months ago. We have nuclear and ballistic proliferation. Let us just listen to what is outspoken by North Korea. And we have cyber threat, and I know you are very much engaged in that issue. We also have global challenges, such as those relating to the environment, to climate change, to the access to energy, to food and water that are very difficult, all of those challenges to respond to. We have other threats, such as piracy, that have an impact on European strategic interests, as they undermine the flow of goods. We have new technologies that are coming up, and capabilities, such as remote piloted vehicles, which are likely to pose additional threats, not now, but in the future. And we have increasing changes of all kinds. Globalization also creates new challenges that have an impact on our defense and security policies. And all these security challenges require a response that individual states have to take into consideration, but not always can provide. And so it's efficient and innovative responses that contribute to international stability, but also to the security of mainland Europe that need a global response by not only member states, but member states getting together. And in that framework, I think we have many reasons to believe in European defense, common security and defense policy. And I would like to highlight three of those reasons. I think that what Europe can bring to the international community, hardly anybody else can provide today with the same advantage. While there are several international players able to take part in a conflict settlement, the European Union is one of the few today, if not the only one, able to muster the political, the diplomatic, the economic, the legal, the police, and the military resources to provide long-term solutions to a complex crisis. And this is really what makes a difference with the European Union when it is engaged in whatever issue. And being the advisor to Lady Ashton, I can testify how much when she sees events occurring, is eager to see that we within Brussels look at a whole range of options, and not only the military option. The second reason is that the EU bodies in Brussels are evolving significantly and bring genuine added value to the global management of conflict. I have seen this if I look back at how Brussels was 4 years ago. There has been an enormous evolution and a positive evolution. We now have within the External Action Service, so the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the EU, to say quickly, 140 delegations in the world, like embassies, which maintain an extensive diplomatic network capable of supporting, but also maximizing the member states' action. And by activating crisis cells in Brussels when necessary, it brings together all relevant stakeholders who are in Brussels to deal with issues. And this is something very new that has been brought up 2 years ago by Lady Ashton, by Mr. Miotto from Italy, who is working with her. And the idea of bringing crisis platform with every actor in order to have a common understanding of what the situation is, but also to give guidance both on the field and in Brussels in areas like diplomatic issues, like civilian and military expertise. The Commission can bring also in aid, humanitarian aid, in development, and what the EU representative within international organizations, like the United Nations, can also bring and help decision making. The third reason for which I think we need to believe in European defence and in common security defence policy is that the European Union's commitment in a wide range of civil and military operations and missions has been a success story. In just 10 years, 9 missions or military operations have been launched, and Bulgaria is a very important contributor to this. I was recently in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I remember the light infantry company protection, which protects the headquarters there. And this in the Balkans is very important. It's very important for Bulgaria, but it's also very important for the Europe as a whole. And recently, with the European Union training mission in Mali, the European Union has showed that the 27 member states are determined to face major security issues, just like they did in the Balkans or in Somalia. And so this also demonstrates that the Europeans are ready to take risks and that they are prepared to do it collectively when necessary. And Bulgaria is one of those countries that, of course, supported politically that through the decisions made by the 27 member states, but also have made a very important commitment in the medical part of the mission with the first group that would interact with the medical. And of course, as you know, in UK and Mali, it is 500 strong commitment by the European Union countries with the aim to help the Malian armed forces to restructure themselves, to get better expertise, in order for them to have the ability now and in the future to be part of the stabilizing force for all of the Malian territories. So the commitment that Bulgaria is doing, that all of our nations within the European Union are doing, goes alongside with the aid to the Malian government, and also we are doing the European Union in order for the transition to take place as smoothly as possible. And so it is really a very important thing. The second element that I would like to highlight for you is that Europe has a wide range of tools at its disposal. With regard to security and defense development, it really makes a difference. And there again, I have 3 examples. The recent events around the Horn of Africa, in the eastern part of Africa, illustrates that the unions continue to mobilize the means to help the state recover sovereignty and its stability, and I'm speaking there of Somalia, is very important. And this was done through humanitarian aid. It was done also with the help provided to the Somalian authority, whether it be by training the armed forces or by fighting piracy along the shoreline. Better known, of course, is the operation EU NAVFOR Atalanta, where Bulgaria there again takes an important role and is part of the headquarters in Northwood in the United Kingdom. But there again, the European Union contribution should not be considered as purely military. It's an important military operation, but this is not the answer. It is really a comprehensive approach, ranging from military action at sea, but also to the communications of good practices to all the ship owners who pass in that area, so all the civilian ship owners, and also legal action, which advice and finance aid to the justice departments in the region, so that the pirates can be convicted, and so that the process is a process of rules of law that what is really the ability that the EU can bring to deal with situations like the one we are facing in the Horn of Africa. Significant progress has also been made on the capability issue. The close relationship now existing between the European Defence Agency, the Military Committee, and the EU military staffs allows a wide and consistent overview of requirements in terms of capability and of responses to be provided. For example, the Maritime Surveillance Initiative of 15 member states will make it possible to exchange valuable information covering most of the European territorial coastline. And this initiative offers tremendous potential outcomes, both in the area of industry and of jobs and of partnership. But those were two examples of what the European Union can bring to the overall situation that we're facing. And a final example of what the EU member states can bring to the game is when member states join forces to pull part of their capabilities. And this is really how I see the future. It's not to build a European army. There's no political willingness. It would not make sense. There's no need for that. But on the other hand, pulling elements together in regional clusters, because we have in certain regions history that bind ourselves together. It also, we have history sometimes, all the time of course, where we have been opposing each other. So it's also expressing that those times are gone and that now we want collectively in a region to be together and to work together. So these elements are very important. But we also need to find ways that will allow those nations to pool while still maintaining the sovereignty of those nations. And this is where, in the air domain which I'm deal with, I see great virtue in what has been done through the European Air Transport Command, which brings together the military transport fleets of Germany, of the Netherlands, of Belgium, of France, and of Luxembourg. And it brings them together on a daily basis. But you still have the lookout, the insignia of each of the nations. Each of the nations can port back their assets if they want. But it is a virtue because on a daily basis, now for example, you have French troops which are being transported by Belgian or German aircraft, and vice versa, depending on where those assets are. So it has a virtue on a permanent basis. But it also allows to prepare the future because they will have the same type of organization in order to operate together in the future. So this is really makes a great difference. It was a very long process. It took more than 10 years to make this happen. But there are other initiatives in other parts of Europe that take place, and I think the more we can make those happen, the better it is, because then they can be operated under EU, under NATO, under national coalition when needed. I can now come to the third part, the last part of my little speech. Just to say that I think the lines are shifting and that European defense is on the right track. But I think also that further progress has also to be made because we are confronted with financial constraints which are detrimental to our military capabilities. And we are all facing those challenges. It's very difficult for the chief of defense. It's very difficult for the political decision makers. But we also need to organize ourselves within the military in order to be able to respond to those challenges. Yes, I think that now we are at a critical junction because if we have less, and by this I mean of course less money, we will do less. But I think that if we find comprehensive solutions, we can do better together. This of course is not a unique situation for the EU. Other nations in Europe, but also elsewhere, the United States of America are in that situation. Canada is as well. All of those nations find themselves in the same situation, which underlines the necessity for continuing close cooperation between all of us, and in particular, very close cooperation between the EU and NATO. And this, I can testify how much this is important and how much we must do the best we can to make this happen, and also on the field. But at the same time, it is not accurate, in my view, to talk about meaningful disarmament or demilitarization as such, because European countries are not really disarming, and you know this very well. Even though severe reductions are already communicated nationally in some investments, and even though others are likely to come in some of the United States, Europe will still be able to present an impressive military power to cater for its own security in Europe and for the support of international peace operations in the world. Because we should not forget that the EU military force represents 1.6 million soldiers in comparison to the 1.4 million in the United States of America. And so as shown on a daily basis, they are committed, like you are committed, both at home and abroad, in difficult and sometimes very severe conditions, like you face in Afghanistan or in Mali. So let's not say that Europe is demilitarizing, and this we hear sometimes by public calls or by the press, and I really tackle this because no, the European nations are engaged, and you are an example of a nation with armed forces that are engaged in various regions in Asia, in Africa, in the Balkans, very much so, and in the Mediterranean Sea. So it is not true to say that Europe is demilitarized. And I think we need to pay tribute to the commitment and acknowledge the price that each nation is ready to pay. And the last example for me is your decision, recent decision to go to Mali, which is an important decision. It's an area with whom you are not very familiar, Mali, at least less than France is. Portugal, Spain, Italy are all familiar. Yes, you have decided to engage, but this is an important decision, of course, by your government and by your chief of defense to put in harm's way, potentially, soldiers of your armed forces. But it is for a very valuable engagement. So, yes, we know. The European nations know where they need to be engaged, and they do that, and we must pay tribute to this commitment. But I think that times have changed. That's the reason why today the time has come to think differently. To think differently because we need to examine new ways to do better without more, and to have the ability of preparing for the future. We need to think differently because we have to foster complementarity between the EU nations. That means to encourage, to support, and to help facilitate new forms of partnership in order to create a common destiny. That also means to optimize our financial resources. We also have to think differently because we need to be convinced that enhanced cooperation is the most promising way ahead. This cooperation is indeed not limited to equipment issues only, even if it seems to be what most people tend to think. Most people, when we think about cooperation, tend to think about industry, tend to think about equipment. But no, cooperation is indeed much more than this. It goes throughout all the aspects of the capability. And so it goes through organizations, procedures, decision-making processes, to individual as well as collective professionalism. It goes, and this is one place, it goes through education as well, through training, through exercises, through logistic support. This is all the areas where cooperation can take place. I have just mentioned a few examples. So to conclude, I said at the last ministerial meeting in Dublin, European defence matters. It matters because it is new, so it is fragile. We need to take care of that, not baby, but young adult. It matters because it's effective and it brings real added value, and we see this in many areas, in the Balkans, in the Horn of Africa, and in the Sahel region. Finally, it matters because it brings solidarity at all levels. It brings solidarity, and this is illustrated through the European Union battle group, in which Bulgaria is very much involved, and is going to be involved in 2014 and 2016. Well, it brings solidarity at all levels, at the soldiers' level, of course, but also at the commanders' level, at the chief of defense level, at the ministerial level, but also across government. And so this is really a solidarity element that is very important. It is therefore very welcome and encouraging that the issue of defense is on the agenda of our discussions and is on the agenda of the European Council at the end of 2013. Because all of this is about our future. This is why I think, as I said yesterday, our world has become more and more unstable and unpredictable. But I also think that Europe has a wide range of tools at its disposal. So with regard to security and development, it really makes a difference. And finally, I think that the lines are shifting and European defense is on the right track. But with the financial crisis, we are at a critical junction, and we cannot let this issue pass by. I think that ambitious solidarity between us Europeans is clearly the way forward. That is a message that I wanted to address to you today, and would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. But before doing so, I would like to thank your Chief of Defense of the Republic of Bulgaria, General Sime, for your hospitality and for giving me the opportunity to express my views and have an interaction with you today. Thank you very much.
European defense really matters. Having in mind this, okay, it's your turn to ask questions to the General. Please, you can ask questions in English, in Bulgarian as well.
Thank you first to be here today and that you express your opinion about the European defense and security policy. And I have two questions. First, at the end of the year, will be a meeting of the European Council dedicated to the European defense policy. What are your expectations for this week? And the second question, you mentioned about pooling sharing initiative, but at the end we know that pooling sharing of capability means pooling sharing of sovereignty, and we see that European member states are not prepared to pooling share essential military capabilities. How can we resolve this problem? Thank you.
The issues we have in front of us. I'll take your first question related to the European Council. As you know, this is the first time in many years that defense will be on the agenda of European heads of states and government. It was the willingness of President Van Rompuy to put this on the agenda. He started discussing with the heads of states that possibility, and there was a tasking last December
which was given by the heads of state collectively, highlighting that they had expectation for a meeting at the end of the year 2013. This highlights for me two things: the awareness by heads of states and government that there was a need collectively to do things together in defense matters. And this is a testimony of the situation in which we are all facing. And what is that situation? We are, and I have had discussions and better understanding for the future. How to prepare the future? How to prepare the future of our capabilities? How to address it? What do we want to do collectively? What do we plan to have as elements to engage as Europeans? These are the expectations for the summit of the end of this year. The expectations are that there is a discussion among the heads of states and government highlighting what ambitions they have collectively. There is, of course, the ambition of each nation. What do they plan to do with their own defense forces? There is the ambition within NATO, which is for security and collective security, and defense, collective defense. But there is also the issue of what do we want to do as Europeans. It's of course not the same level, it's diverse, but there are different views, depending on the history of those nations and depending on their ability. But there is also another topic, which is preparing the future. So it is preparing the capabilities, preparing seeing how the industry, how employment can help fostering with some concrete example. And this is what is expected. We are hoping that before the end of this year, certain pooling and sharing initiatives will flourish. The fight against illegal trafficking, which could foster then a lot of initiatives for industry, initiatives for our partnership between the armed forces. This is what is expected at the European Council of 2013. It's not an end as such, it's to be one step and followed by others. So it's to give a momentum, to give a direction, guidance. It's a kind of a strategic concept that is implemented afterwards, that is looked at in the future. Your second question is another easy one. It's about pooling and sharing and sovereignty. And yes, there is, of course, always the issue of if you partner with someone else. That's the first issue. The second issue is when you want to engage in whatever. It can be humanitarian aid, it can be extraction of citizens which are in harm's ways in other continents, or if you want to engage in support of a stabilizing force. Well, you want to be sure if you partner with others that you will still have that ability of using your own forces. But there are ways to do this. And once again, the European Air Transport Command is an example of what can be done, the type of pooling and sharing that can be a virtue because it does not tackle the sovereignty. So, pooling and sharing, for me, is not a way of reducing cost. It doesn't bring a lot of money afterwards, once you've done this. What does it bring? It brings solidarity. And this is, so where are the areas where we can bring solidarity together whilst not hampering sovereignty? And this will really depend on the relationship with those with whom it is done. We have different examples. I will not address the ones here, you know, but just in two regions of Europe. In the Netherlands and in Belgium, there is a very intense partnership in the naval environment, but still the ships are either Belgian or they are from the Netherlands. They have their flags, but the harmonization is in the way that it is done to prepare them, to repair them, the shipyards. So that's a very. But doing this means they also have a common network to deal with them. So this is where the pooling and sharing takes place. But it's not in the real operations. So the sovereignty of each state is maintained, and they can engage if they want, if states, even though the other states would not want to have their flags on that engagement. It's also the case for the Nordic countries in the Sweden, Finland, and Norway, who have a very intensive partnership in all areas. And there it's different. It's organized politically. So it's driven top down and bottom up. So it's both ways. So my pledge is, I think we come at a time where we probably can't continue to do everything on our own. We need to partner with others in some areas, and it will really be depending on each nation. It's up to each nation to decide. This cannot be decided by Brussels because there's no reason, and it would not. There's no model. It's really depending on also what the nations want to bring for the future, and this is what you are doing here also. Thank you for your
General, thank you very much for your summary. Your serving European defense matters. Of course, there are many questions. Let me ask only two of them. It's obvious that for today and for near term, pooling and sharing and smart defense initiatives are, let's say, the only alternatives. But don't you think that if this concept proves to be successful, many political leaders in our nations, satisfied with the results achieved, they could decide that there is no need to increase the defense expenditures or even to reduce them. And probably the summit in December should address this issue and to send a strong signal that no further defense cuts. And the second question, what is the current state of the cooperation between NATO and EU military committees addressing the capability gap within Europe and between Europe and the United States? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General, for your question. I stressed cooperation in my speech because I said I really think this is a way we need to change our mindset. But that's not the solution. The solution is not there. The solution is solution is just a political decision in member states. What is the vision of the threats and the challenges? This is national. There's of course a collective one. In Lisbon, for NATO it was done. It is already done to the EU, and it might be updated in the future. But it's there. What do we consider as being threats, and then what do we want to do nationally? Pooling and sharing is just one element on top of that. But the main issue is really to decide and to feel if we are in a peaceful world, or at least in a peaceful region, and we do not want to get involved in issues outside that region, or is it different? And I think taking that word from General de Gaulle, who said many years ago that defense is at the cornerstone of the existence of a state. This is the only reason for which we have a state, isn't it? It's to be protected. This is why individually we decide to be together. And so we also need to look at history. We need to look back because, of course, this will not repeat, but the world is a world of, as it is. It is not a peaceful world. We just need to look at the news. And so we should not now decide that even here in Europe, the world will be peaceful in the decades or centuries to come. So we need to prepare for it. And this is another part. I think, yes, we are at a level of investment in defense, which is troublesome. But it's a political decision. There are times, maybe, when the investment needs to be taken in other areas. Maybe, well, that's the decision. But we as military need to explain at our levels, need to explain that there is a level under which you should not go, and that this is really the main issue for the rest. But once again, what I always say is that pooling and sharing does not bring more smart defense, does not bring savings. It brings very little, if any, savings. It's not meant for this. This is not, in my view, maybe smart defense is different, but I don't see why it should be. But pooling and sharing is about solidarity. And so bring solidarity where you want, where it's needed, where it's politically needed, and where it's militarily possible. And your second question is about cooperation with NATO. It works just as well as when you were in Brussels. So by this I mean it works. There is a lot of interaction. The first reason for which it works is that Chief of Defense are, most of them, 21 out of 27, or 21 out of 28, are not level-handed, are members, their nations are members of EU and NATO, so to the best of my knowledge, you do not have armed forces for EU, and armed forces for NATO, and armed forces for Bulgaria. No, we have armed forces. And then so when you build the future, you build it for the commitments that you envisage. So the capability exchanges, discussions take place and are improving, and this, in the last 4 years, I've seen a great change. There are profound discussions between the European Defence Agency and our Land Transformation. There was a seminar last week that I was in one of the panels, but before that, General Palmeros, Secretary, was in another panel. And all of this was the first speech by President Van Rompuy, then Lady Ashton intervened, and then it was a panel in which Secretary with politicians from the European states, with industry. So it shows, and so it was open, and so things have changed. 4 years or 6 years or 8 years ago, this would have been impossible because there would have been a political blockade. But so that's a side of the coin which is positive. The side of the coin which is negative is that we cannot exchange everything. And when we do meetings, formal meetings, both at the ambassador's level or at the military committee level, the substance is not always there. It depends. But we are very limited in topics that we are able to discuss. So, progress, profound progress is made in the interaction between the two organizations. And now, finally, if I look on the field, I'll just take one example. It's what is happening in the Horn of Africa. In the Horn of Africa, we have many groupings who are engaged in military for the fight against piracy, whether it be Atalanta for the EU, Ocean Shield for the NATO, there's also the US who are engaged with India, there's Russia, and what if it goes down to the EU and NATO? We exchange information, and they exchange information, on the field, what they collect, where are the forces, where are the threats, and they pass targets from one another, they pass pirates from one ship to another, so the process is working.
My name is Peter Dieter and I work for the Custody because the lessons from recent operations show that in some way European Union is more flexible and more expedient when we take a decision to deploy forces somewhere in the world. So my question is connected to the situation in Syria, which is very close to Europe. Situation is very, very dangerous. So, is it possible that for conflict resolution, the European Union takes some kind of political decision to deploy there?
Thank you. How can I answer this question, which is first, all of us, an important question, all of us would be eager that something happens, that show stops, that what is happening stops, not in any way, but as quickly as possible, and to prevent all those casualties that take place. But to make this happen, we need collectively to know what can be done. So it's first, of course, as always, you have a political decision. And this goes with, you said the EU is engaged in stabilizing operations more and more, and of course some nations consider it doesn't go as quick as they would, but it does go quickly, because there is the assessment and the willingness of doing this. It first goes with the UN mandate. There has to be a UN mandate. So the United Nations have to see what is to be done. And so there's also the divided by the area of what can be done. When for Syria, unfortunately, we're not yet there. There is no UN. The United Nations are divided at this point on the issue. So until this happens, I don't see any engagement. Once there is a UN mandate, I do not see at all that the EU would just be looking from behind and not doing things. I'm saying not doing things. I'm not telling you what it would be, what the European Union would be doing, because this will depend on political decision by the United Nations and then by the European Union nations as such. And as I said in my little speech, there's a broad area of capability that the European Union can bring. Because in any case, what is the issue one day, hopefully, is that we need to do all we can internationally to allow for all the wounds in the hearts and in the minds to calm down and to rebuild a nation, hopefully, progressively. So it will take a lot of time and engagement that will take place.
Any other questions?
General, very short questions. One customer treaty, do you know this kind of operation, bilateral multilateral?
Yes, I'm French by birth, but I'm not French, I'm European now in front of you. So I want to discuss the Lancaster Treaty, and I'll go into, this was not yet your question, but I'll go into the broad aspect. I think, as you understood my plea, it was about solidarity between nations. So any treaty highlighting that we in the future have an issue of defense is, for me, important. And it's valuable because it's not, as long as it's not exclusive, as long as it's not done in to put aside all the rest of our European countries. That's a treaty. So it could be novel, but there are many other treaties that exist also. But it is valuable. Why? Because it exists, because it has been discussed at the political level, at the various levels of the armed forces, also of industry. But it's useful mainly for me because it goes to the outside world. And this is where we collectively have an issue. Maybe not in Bulgaria, I do not know. But I know in teenagers, or with, of course not in military academies, the feel that they have of the issue of security and defense is very slim. And so anything that can be done in order to show that the world in which we are living and the world in which they will be living in the decades to come is not always a peaceful world. And so we need to be prepared in order to protect our population, in order to protect what we believe in is valuable. And this is where any treaty can help in that aspect. As long as it's also known, it's not hidden, it's not like we saw in history different treaties which were of different nature.
Generals and generals, distinguished guests, colleagues, and media representatives. At the end of this very interesting and in certain way challenging speech, which expectedly and not surprisingly gave some serious food for thought, I would like to express our deepest appreciation to the chairman of the European Union Military Committee for taking time to share with us his thoughts and truly far-sighted vision on Europe's security and defense future. Your visit, General Ruzie, has almost come to its end, though it has been comparatively short. We have jointly managed, I think, to make the best possible use of the available time. Or if you allow me to use your words, we have tried to do more with less. For the media representatives, I will briefly mention that General de Reserves and I had very productive talks this morning, during which he has informed about the advance of the process of transformation of the Bulgarian armed forces, as well as our contribution to the European Union Common Security and Defense Policy. Furthermore, we discussed with Bulgaria's current and future commitments to United Nations, NATO, and to European Union lead operation and mission, and on Bulgaria's ambition and plan to be and sharing initiative. Our meeting was followed by the meeting of General de Reserves with the Minister of Defense, Mr. Dr. Tagarev, that added political content to the discussion of the most topical issues in the national and common European security and defense policies. And finally, I believe I will not be wrong if I say that the highlight of Chairman European Union Military Committee visit to Bulgaria was his very profound and far-seeing speech here in the National Defense College. In proof of the great interest to the topic of US General comes the fact that we have in this hall representation from three ministries: Ministry of Defense, Foreign Ministry, and Ministry of Interior. And the Presidency of the Republic of Bulgaria. We have also audience from at least 6 different countries represented by their defense attaches. And the fact that not all of these countries are European Union member states is another illustration of the global character of the issues we all face in the security and defense policy domains. It is all about our present and it is also about our future. The heritage we will leave for the generation to come. Thank you.
Now, Commodore Angel will present a medal in diploma to General de Ruzie for remembrance and history.
Тракия – красива земя, населявана от горд, героичен и трудолюбив народ. Тракийци, както и всички българи, имали един копнеж за един по-справедлив свят, за един по-добър свят. Справедливо за този ден, 26
облича не само мъжете в наборна възраст, но и непълнолетни младежи и старци. В резултат на това българската армия достига общо 7 на германския генерал Фок да заяви: Одрин е една първокласна крепост и е непревземаема на теория. Но за вас, българите, кой знае? Всичко е възможно. След като продължителната обсада се оказва безрезултатна, българското командване решава да се премине към открит щурм. Задачата е поставена на втора армия с командир генерал-лейтенант Никола Иванов. В 13 часа на 24 март артилерията от всички сектори открива ураганен огън и нанася значителни поражения на противника. Е най-високият връх българската бойна мощ и военно изкуство. Народният поет Иван Вазов възторжено пише: падна Одрин штурм титански и светът мълви тревожно, зато с храбър ляс балкански няма нищо невъзможно. С падането на Одрин всъщност завършва Балканската война. Започват трудните преговори за мир и на 30 май 1913 г. в Лондон е подписан мирен договор, с който се признава официално от великите сили свободата на източна и западна Тракия и тяхното присъединяване към майка България. И дена на Тракия. Нека паметта за миналите героични и трагични събития. Честит празник!
Нека в този ден на признателност сведем глави пред героите, загинали за свободата на Тракия. Да си припомним за величавия подвиг в името на България и да поднесем цветя в знак на признателност. Нека помним и реализираме идеите и заветите им за силна и свободна България. По повод Деня на Тракия и 100 години от Балканската война и падането на Одринската крепост ще бъдат поднесени цветя от името на Тракийската организация в Бургас, официални лица, обществени организации и признателни граждани. Безчет борци простреляни по полята, а други жертви на мор и на мрак. И на чаталча гниещи в платата. Заплатиха с живота си тази свобода, която беше така трайна. И въпреки, че славни разкошни чело не вечеят и цял свят ни слави, това поколение война да не направи. Загиналите, Иван Вазов казва: тези паметници не са нужни на загиналите. Те са смъртни. Паметниците са за останалите живи, за потомците, за да развиват и утвърждават в тях достойни чувства, заради които един народ заслужава да живее. Ето това е стойността на събитията, станали през 1912-1913 година по време на Балканската война. Велик е нашият войник. Велик, велик, велик. Измокрен, гладен, уморен. Без